drink.
You go back in there?
We need Malox. If anybody has.
What do you need?
Malox.
No. Can you just give me a brief of what happened, man?
One round's good, but maybe.
Oh, I had a steel baseball bat, fucking swinging for the stars.
Bro, can you give me?
He's a fucking hero. Yeah.
Did the right thing. I was in. My name's real Jake Lang.
Say it again. Jake Lang.
JAKELANG.
Where are you at online?
On Instagram, Facebook. I got Graham. Patriot. I own libertycentric.com. It's like Parler, but it's like an Instagram version. We give you freedom of speech, and we fight the fuck for your rights.
Absolutely.
Can you give me a brief what happened to you?
Yeah,
don't do that.
I just got out
That's
of the
OC
fucking
spray.
pain zone.
Hey, partner.
Yeah.
Just scoot over so I got some.
I ran out of neutralizer.
We climbed up the scaffolding, and we got on that main area, and we pushed him back, and we charged the front. There's a double door, like hallway, and so we broke the glass, pulled the double doors, reached around in, pulled it open, and then it was like the movie 300 Spartans. It was fucking a line of 5 guys, fucking police officers, 5 of us, heaving, hoeing. People were almost dying in between all the heat. You know, everyone is two forces just pushing on each other. That lasted about an hour or two. Then they started fucking hitting us with batons in the face, rubber bullet in the foot, a real strong pepper spray. It's been 30 minutes. I can't open my eyes. And we started bringing out the fucking metal rods and everything on these motherfuckers.
Amen. Yeah! My Patriot, Rio Jake Lane. What's your name, brother?
Yeah.
The battle is the Lord's, it's not ours. Really just excited to share my story as a Jan 6 political prisoner for 40 months. So this is by God's grace. I've been surrounded by such an amazing support system through January 6th. We have volunteers, I have a staff. And so where there's a will, there's a way. Basically, the way that all my podcasts work and interviews is I call out to either my fiance, Rachel, God bless her soul, or one of my assistants or one of the volunteers from the J6 groups. And they literally will put me on speakerphone, butt to butt with another phone to connect, or they will patch it in through like Tape a Call app, and they will just 3-way call whoever I'm bringing on my podcast, and we just figure out a way. So I call in through the jail phones and we 3-way it. We go butt to butt. Sometimes if we can't even get a 3-way going, we get 2 cell phones linked up to one another, and we just make it happen. I mean, when you're a prisoner, if you know one thing about prisoners, they will fashion anything to make it happen. When you have time on your hands, you figure out how to make it happen. And I give God the glory for that, because we have been able to reach tens of millions of people through, these kind of like MacGyvered methods. First of all, I'm an open book. Everything I did on January 6th, I'm proud of. I think that the January 6th Patriots stood up against tyranny that day. We had peaceful intentions in our heart. We didn't bring weapons. I mean, you're talking about a group of conservative Republican Trump supporters, probably 95% or more are gun owners. And so there was no guns in the crowd. Nobody brought weapons with them. So, my conduct on January 6th and my conduct thus far after January 6th, how I've been treated in the jails, how we've risen against the adversity through faith in God, through community, through unity, through love, mutual support. All of these things I'm not a criminal that robbed a gas station. I have no problem talking about my case, talking about what happened on January 6th, and talking about what's plaguing our community and what's been happening the last, 3 years and 4 months I've been incarcerated. It's all transparency is key. As Jesus says, what is whispered in the ear will be screamed from the rooftops, and the truth brings healing. And so I'm here today to just talk about the truth and, let everybody in this audience know that we're up against lies. We're up against the devil's deception, and we can only arm ourselves with the truth. And so I speak in God's Holy Spirit, and let your own conscience confirm to you that the Holy Spirit's with me, which is the spirit of truth, not the spirit of error. I'm really blessed to have Stephen Metcalf, who's been my friend for a long time, based out of New York City, represented one of the main Proud Boys in the Proud Boys trial for 6 months, a grueling trial, the longest federal trial I think ever in in history. He got a lot of weight underneath his belt there. We are scheduled to go to trial September 9th, 2024. My trial has been rescheduled 4 times now. So God willing, it does happen in September. This is very interesting. So in the very onset, obviously, when I was first incarcerated, arrested, kidnapped by the FBI, unbelievably, on January 16th, 2021, about a week after January 6th. My lawyer was obviously very against interviews and speaking out about the case and stuff like that. But I told him, I said, Steve, we are fighting an information war here. The hearts and the minds of the American people have been completely brainwashed and tainted. You have people like Kevin McCarthy, Ted Cruz, and obviously every single Democrat calling us insurrectionists and violent domestic terrorists and extremists. And we need to get the truth that they need to hear my voice. They need to hear the voice of all my brothers and sisters, 1,400 of us that have been charged through January 6th, so that we can win them back to the truth. Because the narrative that they obviously sold to us with the J6 select committees and Washington Post garbage and New York Times garbage and MSNBC garbage is a complete fabricated lie. And it's only through the amount of work that we've done as a community, January 6ers, that we created a healthy enough environment where Donald Trump could come forward and now finally say he's going to pardon for the last 3.5 years almost. He wouldn't have felt comfortable enough, like the American people were on our side enough to be able to even say that he's going to pardon us. That's why he didn't say it years ago, because now is the right time. We have won back tens of millions of people who used to think wrongly about January 6th. They now see it as a great show of force of American unity, of peaceful, patriotic protesting. And what happens when you attack and kill Americans, we stand up and we don't run. We fight back. These colors don't run. And so that narrative that we've been pushing is the truthful narrative. January 6th was one of those times where people will look back 100 years from now and say, free men stood against tyranny. We didn't do it armed. We didn't do it, even plan it, but we did it. And we went inside that building that day. The people were in the people's house. And that's just what it was. I mean, we didn't stay outside the building. We didn't run and cower when we were attacked brutally and mercilessly by the Capitol Police. We overran the redcoats and we ended up inside the building peacefully walking around, hanging out, most of us. I mean, I didn't get the opportunity. I was in like a Spartan warfare style match for 3 hours trying to save people's lives and defend my own life and save this country from a communist coup d'etat. But the history will show, when we were pushed, when we were prodded, when we were attacked and murdered and bludgeoned, we didn't run, we stood up and we took the building. And it was an amazing, the symbolism is so historic that the American people are not sheep. We will not bow down and surrender. We will not eat the bugs. We will not cower to the New World Order, to the globalists, to the tyrants. If it comes down to it, we will rise. And that's what January 6th was, just the smallest little thumb in the eye to the New World Order, to the deep state, to the shadow government, whatever you want to call them. We stood up without a single weapon, and we showed what we can do as united Americans. So, I mean, this is important to later on what we're going to be discussing, because, the chronological details of my story, I'm one of 1,400 January 6ers. I'm just another patriot out here. I'm from New York. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've started many companies. I've had successes. I've had failures. I've lived a crazy life for a young man. I'm 29 years old as of yesterday. I was 25 on January 6th. I came down to New York. I came down from New York to Washington, D.C. with a group of Jewish protesters, I guess, Jewish Trump supporters from New York City. They came in 2 buses, and I drove with the organizer, my friend Sam. They're just a bunch of great people from Hillel and Chabad, and I'm a born again Christian, but my mother's Jewish, and so I have great roots in the Jewish community in New York. And these people, you're like your everyday meek, yarmulke wearing, just great Jewish people. So we came down there together. And, I've had a business meeting the day before on actually in my lawyer's office on Park Avenue with a payment processing company that I was partnered with for a business venture. And I was in slacks. I was in a dress shirt. I was in my nice leather jacket. I'm from New York City. I'm not from, I'm from upstate, but I've been living in New York City for 7 years, so I came dressed differently than other Trump supporters. I didn't have on camo, Carhartt stuff, but I came dressed how I dressed in Steve Madden leather boots and business slacks and a dress shirt and, my black leather jacket. And I came with my Trump hat on and chanting that, it ain't over yet. We're still coming. The Trump supporters and the constitutionalists are going to stand here and protest this stolen election. On January 6th, it seemed to just materialize. It was absolutely incredible. I'm not ashamed of having to use defensive mechanisms against armed tyrants, but it was actually, we've later found out, it was handed to me by a man named Josiah Kenyon, who was, I guess he was an agitator. I don't even like using those terms and stuff, but in retrospect to hearing what he said, I've known him, I've done time with him, incarcerated with him. He's a tender soul. He's definitely a strange person. He walked around barefoot in the prisons and, bragged about living under bridges and stuff like that. But God bless him. I love him. And yeah, I love everybody, Viva. I don't hold personal, the guy has had all kinds of personal struggles with homelessness and addiction and stuff, but it's been later found out that, he said he was there that day to have Trump supporters get hurt and like that, and he was walking through the crowd figuring out how to I guess set people up. In that given time and moment, though, I was not ashamed, and I'm still not ashamed, that when there were women being injured, people dying, we arrived to January 6th without weapons. I mean, I don't even know where the baseball bat materialized from before Josiah had it or who brought it or whatnot, but at that moment there were people's lives at stake, and they killed a woman in my arms, Rosanne Boyland, about 20 minutes, maybe less, 10, 15 minutes prior to that defensive take that me and a group of men had to take. Whatever we had to create basically a barrier between the Capitol Police, who were murdering unarmed protesters, and the rest of our fellow patriots. And so, I got a hold of a riot sheet, and I got a hold of, a bat, and I used it to dissuade the Capitol Police from killing and injuring more people. I mean, you got to do what you got to do. I'm a man. I'm not a coward, God forbid. And when it comes time to stand up against evil, I'm a prayer warrior. But when it comes time in the physical, you got to make a stand. And if you turn and run, while people are being injured, innocent people, I don't know how you could look at yourself in the mirror. I couldn't live with myself if I let more people die without doing something. I listened to Trump's whole entire speech. I loved it. He was laying down an awesome indictment on all of the counties and how they flipped randomly in the middle of the night. And, when he said the explosions of BS line, I remember cheering and laughing. And it was one of the most famous lines that day. And, there's video of me leaving the ellipse there, where the Washington Monument is, and in a sense of joy and adulation, I was doing back handsprings and running with a flag saying freedom, and it was awesome. And we just haphazardly went down to the Capitol. I had no idea that was even part of the plan. I was just there to hear Trump speak, and when he said that we're going down there to peacefully and patriotically protest, I said, let's go. I'm here for my country, and I'm willing to stand up and let my voice be heard. And that's when the unthinkable happened. The Capitol Police unleashed an attack on us that left 4 unarmed patriots dead. Kevin Greason and Benjamin Phillip, both men in their 50s, I believe. The reports that we now have access to are basically saying that those flash grenades and those concussion grenades landed somewhere near their feet, and they basically suffered a heart attack from the shock of being fired upon by the police that are supposed to be protecting us. And the medical reports about Rosanne Boyland are completely unfounded, fabricated nonsense. I literally was trying to save her life. She was in my arms as she was being soaked with pepper spray and tear gas and CS gas. She was being bludgeoned later on by Officer Lila Morris, and she was, from a combination of her injuries, she succumbed to being trampled, to just being completely asphyxiated by all the chemicals that she
and obviously being bludgeoned while she was fighting for her life. She succumbed, and Father God called her home. And one of my main motivations and a lot of my prison workouts and stuff is that I wasn't able to pick up Roseanne at that point. She was lodged underneath about 3 or 4 other people, and I'm yanking on her, and I'm popping up, and there's a well spread video of me like popping up from trying to yank on her, popping up with my hands up, screaming at the police like in a frantic like stopping motion, like you're landing an airplane, and pointing down. And I wasn't able to dislodge her, but I had to marshal my time and go and try to save another man, Philip Anderson, who claims I saved his life in a video that is, available everywhere. I was able to drag him down out of that situation. He was holding Roseanne's hand as she died. And it was just a horrible circumstance. You don't think when you're going to a political rally, you're going to end up, in a life or death situation, people dying in front of you, dragging limp bodies, unconscious bodies out of, a police riot, dog pile. And so, but when it came time to take action, I was there to try to help people, help our country, and help the injured, wounded warriors that were standing shoulder to shoulder with me. I knew for certain, God forbid, that she was dead. Anybody that does their real research out there, there's clips of me literally moments later frantically going through the crowd at January 6th, grabbing people by the shoulders and screaming, "They killed a woman, they killed a woman." And then later on that evening on my own Instagram, I posted some, pretty inflammatory stories or Instagram posts saying, "They killed a woman. This is war. They declared war on America. They killed a woman right in my arms. And, I won't, be backing down and stuff." So I knew Roseanne was dead. And that's pretty much why I took action later on with the Ride Shield and the bat to, create that barrier of men between the men and the women and the elderly that were there. I'm a young man. I was a college wrestler. I'm not going to just sit by as a uniformed force of redcoats just start bludgeoning and murdering people without doing something about it. I have to do something. The essence of all January 6ers charges is political persecution and unfounded, ridiculous accusations against us. But I mean, me particularly, I have the blanket political charge. It's a 20-year felony charge called obstruction of Congress. It's a very serious 1512 statute, it's called. And basically, this was like the weaponized tool, the instrument of political witch hunting that they used against me and 330 other Jan 6ers and Donald Trump. That case, as it stands, in 5 days, or maybe 6 days, will go in front of the Supreme Court of the United States. My legal team was the first one to appeal to the Supreme Court. Garrett Miller and Mr. Fisher joined in with that appeal, and Fisher's appeal was granted. And so we are slated to do the biggest showdown of the January 6th world here in 6 days in the Supreme Court, the opening argument. So that's one of my main charges. And then I have a slew of other charges, obviously. We ended up doing, that's just historical reference. Look at the photos of January 6th. We ended up taking the building. We ended up flushing the tyrants out. They ended up running. The people were in the people's house, and we were in there. How can you deny that? The people took the building. When they attacked us first, we refused to run. We overran the murderers, the tyrants, the socialists, the communist coup d'etat, and for just a little while, America was safe. And then the installment of the bought and paid for communist puppet regime leader Joe Biden continued at 8 or 9 p.m. that night. It's just historical fact. We showed up to peacefully protest. They attacked us. We retaliated. We took the building, and then they flushed us out after, a few hours of us, meandering around in there. So here's the stance that is the truth. On the east side of the Capitol building, the doors miraculously opened and people were able to, like human beings, go inside and have their voices heard by our elected officials. For some reason, those people decided to run because they're guilty. They got caught with their hands in the cookie jar. But on the west side, of course, well, you had one side of the Capitol, famously Capitol police officers taking selfies with Jan Sixers, fist bumping them, people saying with inside the red ropes. It was awesome. That's how people wanted to act that day. That's how I was acting until I got forced into a position to have to defend my life and defend other people's lives. And on the west side of the Capitol was the other side where famously concussion grenades were shot into a static crowd, where tear gas canisters were lobbed in there, stinger balls, pepper ball bullets ripping through people's faces, Capitol police officers lunging over the bike barricades and hitting people with steel batons and dragging people over those bike barricades. And so you have the one side of the Capitol where people just moved forward in a slow kind of like herd-like manner towards the steps of the Capitol and slowly went upstairs, and then the doors opened and they went inside. And then you have the other side where we were forced to we were being attacked and we were forced to defend ourselves. So, the west side of the Capitol, where I ended up inside that tunnel, we walked into the tunnel at about 2:40 p.m. I was with a group of 100, 200 people. We wanted to go inside the Capitol building. There's no, obviously, we were motioning and walking towards going inside. We were entering into a doorway. Some windows were broken open, so some doors could be opened that I had no part in, but I was there filming. I have, this is obviously the Gulag connection. And we're trying to, get our voices out, and we're appreciative of everybody that bears with us and gives us the time of day to tell our side of the story, not the J6 Select Committee, Liz Cheney lies. And so, it was no mystery that the protesters, myself included, wanted our voices heard, wanted to be inside the processions that were going on that day, not to interrupt them, but to encourage our lawmakers to listen to our voices, the will of the people. We showed up in mass to have our voices heard, and we felt that our voices weren't being heard. And we basically advanced. We did not see that the Capitol grounds were off limits. There was no sign postage. There was no dispersal orders. We moved forward, and like I said, I ended up inside that doorway, and a kettle pot happened where you had 1,000 people pushing from the back and the Capitol Police refusing to give way inside that tunnel. And the situation got deadly very quickly. I was videotaping for, like I said, in a journalistic capacity. I was there in the beginning to film for my social media website, libertycentric.com. That's like a Facebook for conservatives. And eventually I started screaming out on camera, on my own camera, the police are going to kill us. We're getting squished to death in here. We're going to die. And then the police started attacking us in that enclosed space with chemical weapons, with tear gas, with metal batons, with all kinds of manner of just assault. And so eventually I had to put my phone away, put my hands up, and start putting a space between the women that were there, the elderly men that were there, and myself, to try to make so that Capitol Police weren't killing people. And, I found myself in that tunnel for like 2.5 hours, trying to, protect the lives of the people that were inside there with me, my brothers and sisters.
I had no criminal record before this. I got caught with pot in the Hamptons when I was 19 or 20 years old on 4th of July before, but I had no criminal record. That was stricken. That was conditional discharged. And, so, no, I'm just, a college wrestler and entrepreneur in New York City. I got involved in nightlife before. I was, running pretty wild in the flesh. I was a sinner, and I'm saved by grace, by the blood of Jesus. And, I'm born again as of 2 months before January 6th. I was baptized and sober on January 6th for a couple months, and in my clear mind, right mind, walking in God's Spirit, listening to our Father in heaven tell us to stand up. What would our founding fathers done? What would, the great patriots that founded this country done when faced with a communist coup d'etat like that, a takeover of our country with a stolen election? I think we were very measured in our approach that day, and very restrained We showed great restraint. I have not been afforded my constitutional right to bond. I've gone 2 times before the judge. I've been denied. And I tried just to go a 3rd time a couple weeks ago, and Brooklyn Federal Prison, where I'm located, refused to send a representative, and the judge had to cancel the meeting. So, we're talking about 1,180 days in pretrial detention. It's incredible. It's truly incredible. I should have been bonded out. Many of us Jan Sixers, we believe that we've been put on a list by like the FBI that they handed to the judge or somebody, said, under no circumstances are these, about 60 or 70 of us that have never had the opportunity to get bond. Under no circumstances are you allowed to let these guys out of jail. They know too much information about, like the murder that is covered up of Rosanne Boyland. They have too strong of a case, or too influential, or whatever it may be. There's a certain number of us that, it just seems like picking numbers out of a hat at some point, where some people got bond and others didn't. Literally they're standing shoulder to shoulder doing the same exact thing with similar, backgrounds and whatever, no criminal history type of people. And some of us just have been denied, and we believe it to be some type of, strict, under no circumstances this person getting bond, that the feds really lean hard on the judges, and they all go out to drinks together after court's over anyway. I actually have, as far as federal district court judges go, I've been blessed. I have a Trump appointee, Judge Nichols. He originally dropped my 1512 charge, which is why when the prosecution pushed that up to the appellate court, and the appellate court overturned my judge's decision, and then we pushed it up to Supreme Court after that. So Mr. Nichols has made a couple, good, sound judgment calls, but not letting me out on bond has put me at such a severe disadvantage. The entire weight of the U.S. Attorney's Office, the FBI, all of the, floors and floors and teams of people that they have working on our cases, compared to somebody like me who's been in solitary confinement for 2 years of my incarceration, moved to 15 different prisons, had my discovery evidence and my hard drives and my legal documents destroyed and shifted around, and had to reacclimate to 15 different prisons. It's like David and Goliath. They have every means at their disposal, and the January Sixers have been parsed out and persecuted without having we're relying on the House subcommittee on oversight to release us 5,000 hours of video at a time on Rumble 3.5 years later. What about my 1,000 Jan Sixers that have been adjudicated already that did not have access to this exculpatory evidence? That's a mistrial. That's a Brady violation. That is a due process violation. Why are we waiting years later for the Jan 6 video to come out? You can't go to trial without all your evidence. How can you exonerate yourself without seeing all the clips? Oh, of course. My my bond hearings read like a complete, like the worst liberal hit piece article ever. The prosecutors allege and try to use everything against you. And, my formation of an armed group of patriots after January 6th to defend this country, from my posting on social media to my interviews that I've been doing recently to my conduct on January 6th to everything. One of the main reasons they say that, they're holding me is that others to commit violence, but I've done maybe 700, 800 interviews, and I've only spoke the peace of God and the love of our country over the tens of millions of people that I've spoken to. I've never said, hey, anybody listening to my voice right now, I want you to get your nearest thing and go do something. I've had the means, but I've not exercised those means because that's not in my heart. We're fighting a spiritual war here. We're not fighting against flesh and blood. We wrestle against principalities and against darkness in heavenly places. And so their accusations are completely unfounded, the government's and many other people's, but this is just your everyday, I guess, it's become an everyday situation, but your smearing of good conservative individuals. They did it to Peter Navarro. They did it to Steve Bannon. They're doing it to Trump. They've done it to 1,400 of us. They're able to get away with it because the courts are slanted. The entire process is slanted towards your liberal Democrat defendants. If I was a Black Lives Matter protester and did the same exact thing I did on January 6th, I'd have been out within a day, out on bond, offered a 3-year probation plea deal, and we would have been on our merry way. But because we stand up for Constitution, because we're patriots, Republicans, libertarians, they are coming and hammering down on us. And it's just a two-tier justice system. Me and all the January 6ers that are incarcerated in 2021 had to go through the worst COVID tyranny. If you think it was bad being in Chicago or New York or LA or whatever city you're from, or God willing, you're from a rural area, wasn't that bad. If you think it was bad not being able to go into your favorite restaurant or go watch a movie or go to yoga or whatever you do because of COVID, imagine being locked in a cell for 23 hours a day for 6 months. And then 22 hours a day for another 3 months, and then 21 hours a day for another 3 months. And so we went through solitary confinement forced on us the first year of incarceration without haircuts, without religious services, without most of the time direct access to sunlight, without family visitation, without video visitation, without access to legal libraries, without being able to see our attorneys, without doing a 14-day quarantine, without being able to shave. We did a year of hard time. The Gen 6 Patriots that did that year with me, you guys are rock stars. You are absolute, the strongest people on earth, and I commend you. Yeah, the first year was practically all prisoners went through it. We got hit a little bit harder because we're Jan 6ers. They were giving leniency and leeway to the COVID lockdowns to the other inmates into DC jail a lot more. They were being extremely stringent on the January 6ers. The first year or two in the DC jail gulag, that is, all the guards there are, bleeding liberals. They wore their Kamala Harris shirts into the prison sometimes, and they loved watching us squirm through just arbitrary enforcement of the, million-page rule book there and the COVID lockdowns. And, if you refuse to take a COVID nose swab, you have to do 14 days in the cell, only get out for a 10-minute shower every 3 days. They loved coming to us with all that garbage nonsense. And so the first year of solitary was practically all through COVID. I also got some times where I was sent to the hole for organizing the January 6ers, for trying to lead Bible studies, for trying to get out of our cell to be able to worship together, for showing a Bible and some family pictures to another inmate. I got pepper sprayed and tossed in the hole for 3 months before. I've been in the hole, which is the real deal solitary confinement, where you're locked not with the other Jan 6ers. You're in the basement of DC jail. I've done over a year in that area as well, too. About 6 months my first year in DC jail, and then I came back in 2023, and I did practically a whole year in DC jail in 2023 as well, too. Most of that in the hole. Again, just trying to ostracize me from the January 6ers because of the organizational work we do. We're so strong on that front. The prayer groups, the protests, the documentaries, the podcasts, the interviews, the fundraising, the powers that be, the U.S. Marshals, the FBI, the U.S. Attorney's Office, they want to try to single out the leaders like they did to Joe Biggs and Enrique Tarrio and all these awesome Proud Boys and Oath Keeper types, and put them in solitary and keep them away from the core group of the Jan 6ers. And, they put me in that category and tossed me in the hole. I'm so blessed, man. I've got such an amazing family, an all-American family of love and support. My father, Ned Lang, has been unequivocally like the dad of the Jan 6 movement. He's just been a rock for all of us. The first year of our incarceration, before there was a single organization, a single 501c3, an LLC, before the whole entire community really got organized like the last 2 years, it was my dad and a few other individual donors that were taking care of people's commissaries and doing the right thing. And my mom, steadfast. They're Trumpers. They're awesome people. My dad's Christian. He taught me how to pray. He taught me how to love God. He taught me to be a good man. I strayed from that, like I said, from 18 years old to like 25 when I was club promoting and just being an absolute flesh-driven man. But his lessons that he taught me in my young adulthood and throughout my life. They've come back now, and I'm just so grateful to have them as a father. And I have a beautiful fiance, Rachel, who's a Jan 6er. She's a complete savage. God bless her. She was in the Capitol for 12 minutes. She's such a beautiful woman and loves God and is steadfast and loyal to me. And I've got a sister, Lexi, who fought in the Israeli army, and she's a doctor, and she's like the good egg. And I'm blessed. I've got a great family. I've come from a great area. Where my dad's well off. He's worked hard his whole life. He's an entrepreneur and taught me to be an entrepreneur and make my own way. And I'm blessed. I've got the best family I think a person can ask for, and they're so supportive of me. Postponed 4 times for various different reasons, the latest being that my main charge is going before Supreme Court. So if Supreme Court strikes it down and I just went to trial with it on, then I'd have to have a complete retrial, and it would just be not in the best interest of justice. And, there's many reasons. We haven't had our exculpatory evidence. The government knows every federal asset, every confidential human source, every DHS, Department of Homeland Security officer, every single park police, every FBI, every CIA asset and federal agent that's in that crowd. And I want to know, were any of them within eye shot of me, within arm shot of me? Were any of them near me? Were they in the tunnel with me? What did they do? Did they incite the crowd? Did they do things to orchestrate January 6th? Because the government's not telling us, which is our Brady material right, our exculpatory evidence right. And so we've got independent investigative journalists that have to find all this out. Epic Times and Gateway Pundit and all of you awesome podcasters and video sleuths out there. The government's not telling us the full story. So how do you go to trial without knowing, you go to trial with 10% of the truth and you don't get the other 90% for 3.5 years until, if I went to trial, let's say 4 months, 5 months after January 6th, I'd have 1% of the information that's currently available to me right now in the setup of January 6th and the police brutality of January 6th and all that we've exposed. And so in the best interest of justice, not in my best interest, but in the best interest of exonerating myself from these fabricated, ridiculous charges, there's been many reasons why we haven't been able to go to trial. We're fighting for change of venue, which is extremely important. I have change of venue polling data that j6legal.org, my organization, was able to get from Triton Polling that shows some of the most biased jury pool available, I believe, in the country. And if you want to pull that up, I don't know if you can pull it up. I can't really see what we're doing here, but if you go to j6changeofvenue.com, you can see this data that says, 86% of Washington, 86.4% of Washington, D.C. residents believe January 6th was an insurrection. 80% believe it was an act of domestic terrorism. 50% believe that we should be given the death penalty or life in prison as defendants, as protesters, no matter what we did on January 6th. And so these different legal actions that we're taking, we're still fighting for change of venue. We are still fighting the 1512 charge, going to Supreme Court in 6 days for it. We're still fighting to get all my exculpatory evidence. If need be, God forbid, if I have to sit in prison in order to get the best environment, the best amount of data, and the best pre-trial motions available and fight this litigation before I go to trial, which 90% of winning a federal case is in pre-trial motions, that if I have to sit in prison, God forbid, without bond even, and fight this battle the right way in order to exonerate myself, I will. It's not my choice. I'm doing it under coercion. I'm doing it under these inhumane living, cruel and unusual punishment living conditions. But at the end of the day, winning is all that matters, and the truth is all that matters. And so the postponement of my trial, which is one of the questions out there, obviously, has been equal parts the government. I had the 1512 charge removed from me. The government made the decision, which my judge Nichols yelled at the prosecutor, saying, because they were making the same argument in court a couple months ago at a status conference. They're like, Mr. Lang, is agreeing to postpone his trial in some ways. I said, no, I'm not really agreeing. I'm doing it under duress. But anyway, in the best interest of justice, I do have to say that there are certain reasons why I can't go to trial yet, because we have pretrial motions still pending. We have 1512 still pending. But then the judge yelled at the prosecutor and said, I was the one who dropped Mr. Lang's 1512 charge. It was your decision, the prosecution's decision, to appeal my overturning of his charge to the appellate court, which they then struck down my decision. And now we're ending up in Supreme Court, which is pushing Mr. Lang's trial off for an entire year. So if you wanted to take him to trial as quickly as possible, you should have let my decision to remove the 1512 charge stand. It's your fault that Mr. Lang's not going to trial. So he smacked down the prosecutors, and my lawyers and me, we looked at the prosecutor and we just put our hands up in the air like, you can't blame him. His logic's correct. If you guys would give us the exculpatory evidence we're entitled to, of all federal assets, of all agitators, of all police brutality incidents on January 6th, if you would give us that access, because you have teams, hundreds of people that have reviewed this evidence, you have it all. If you give us that access and you wouldn't fight our pretrial motions for change of venue, which is obviously we need one, the numbers show unequivocally, it's really the government's just blatant hard-headedness and unwilling to cooperate in order for the best interest of justice. I keep using that term because it's a legal term. My best interest is different than the prosecution's best interest, but both of those are supposed to meet in the middle for the best interest of justice. If you have a biased jury pool that is, so slanted that you're saying 70% of the jurors, according to the data that we collected through Triton polling, are saying that no matter what somebody did on January 6th, they deserve prison time. That means old grandmas that were 100 yards away who never even came into contact with the Capitol police officers, they deserve to go to prison. These people have a blatant and inherent and deep-seated prejudice against Donald Trump and his supporters and January 6th protesters. And so it's really the onus is on the government in all these reasons why my trial has been delayed so long. But you know what? At the end of the day, if we have to do what we got to do to get the win, we will do it, including 40 months incarceration without a trial. It depends on your conditions, like COVID, 23 hours a day lockdown. In some places that could be counted as 3 times that you've done really 3 years in prison because you've done 1 year on 23 hours and one because of that. But that's up to the judge. And so, this pretrial detainment that I've been subjected to is not normal. As far as the rights that you're supposed to be afforded. As a pretrial defendant, first of all, you're supposed to be afforded bond. Liberty is the norm, which is like the statute right out of the law code. But you're also supposed to be afforded incredible more rights. You're innocent until proven guilty. You should have full access to video visitation, to all different manners of religious services, law libraries, it really should just be the only thing that they're there to do is to make sure you show up to your court case. So all other liberties should be afforded to you. We should have never been in solitaries and no family visits, no haircuts, no sunlight, all this nonsense. So you have to understand, we were not convicted criminals. There are now many wrongfully convicted January 6ers, but for years, most of us in pretrial detention were not convicted. So they're treating innocent American accused like worse than Gitmo prisoners. Viva, we're fighting against an ideological evil that if we compromise to it, which that's what the plea deal is, you sign a contract, you compromise with the enemy. In this scenario, there's no amount they're trying to use us as political fodder to get Trump. And all of our plea deals in some way, nature, or form have language in them that we must renounce our political beliefs, turn on Trump, blame it on him. He told us to go to the Capitol, all this nonsense lies. And so I never even entertained a plea deal. They offered me 9 years plea deal 3 years ago. And I told them, no plea to tyranny. I can't imagine ever signing a contract with my enemy. And the idea is multifaceted. It's a novel legal argument that is based off of our Declaration of Independence. First and foremost, Americans have the right to defend their country against tyranny. Point blank, period. That is our right. That is ingrained into our Second Amendment, into our First Amendment, into our founding documentation. And obviously, we were there for peaceful means. But when a Capitol Police force This is a federal law enforcement agency, completely removed from our normal, sheriffs that come get your cat out of a tree or bring like a drunken teenager home and drop them off the front porch at their parents' house. These are people that hate flyover country. They hate Republicans. They hate conservatives, and they were there to inflict pain upon us. And they were there, the Capitol Police officers, to be the Gestapo, to be the redcoats protecting the communist coup d'etat that was happening inside the building. And so my first and foremost legal argument is, if I had a reasonable preponderance, a reasonable belief that the election was stolen, that our country was being sold down the river to Joe Biden, who's bought and paid for by the CCP, who is a gun grabber, who is against freedom of speech rights, then we have the right to stand against that, no matter what. Even if it's just peacefully using our voices and waving flags and refusing with saying we revoke our consent to this election, send the votes back to our state legislatures, and listen to the will of the people. It is we, the people, who ordain and give this government its power. And without our consent, it is tyrannical. And so that's the first and foremost legal defense. Do we have the right, when attacked, when our country's election is stolen, when our voice is stolen as a people, do we have a right to stand up against it? And that's the first defense. And obviously, I was in self-defense that day, and I was in defense of third person, which is the second and third prongs of the defense. People were being injured around me. I had to do something about it. I myself was injured critically. I was shot with a rubber bullet in my foot, broken foot, bludgeoned over the skull, my head split open, bleeding everywhere. My life was in danger. Every human being has a right to defend themselves. So I have a three-pronged approach to my trial. That is, I think it's novel in its approach, because, at the end of the day, I did what I did. I was caught on camera in 10 different angles. I posted it on my social media. God is my witness. I'm not a violent person. I'm a spiritual warrior. I pray before I do anything, especially something of that nature. I was praying on the Capitol steps of Coy Griffin, my brother, before I went back into the tunnel to defend this country. And it's unfortunate that men at times in our history have to take matters in their own hands and defend freedom. It just happens. It's the blood of patriots and tyrants is what keeps this tree of liberty alive. I ran for Congress against AOC as a conservative independent in 2020. In July of 2020, I'm out in 100-degree weather during COVID season talking to residents in Queens, New York about the freedom of speech and gun rights and stuff. I mean, I own a libertarian freedom of speech website. I've been an activist on social media against New World Order and abortion and adrenochrome and Rothschild central banking for years before, with tens of thousands of followers. I mean, it's just dumb. But God bless people. They're grasping. People, I admire the spirit because they want to get a win. They're grasping for anything, and they're not giving up. And they're, I guess if they point fingers at enough people and call everybody fed, they may find one or two. So I do not have one for my own defense. I'm very blessed. Like I said, I come from a great family, and my father is extremely supportive of me. And so I haven't been put in the position where I need commissary money or phone call money or legal defense money. I'm very blessed. And so it made me, with my background, and I used to be a 7-figure, business e-commerce owner. And I'm a social media marketing, guy. And so with all of those things put together, and my love of righteousness, and I try to walk an upright life. I'm not perfect. I'm just a humble servant of the Lord Jesus. I just said, you know what? I'm going to start the fundraisers. I know how to do it. I'm capable, and God will bless it if I put my hand towards it. And so we've raised $1.2 million for the Jan Sixers. And I sent you through my assistance, the email system that I have in the jail here, I sent you a DM recently, I think before our communications here started, our interview, breaking down an approximate breakdown
That's approximate. We have 2 different independent CPAs. I have no problem. The numbers are they're going to be off by a couple $10,000. I run my organizations and stuff. Most of the time I don't get to see what's. We're sending out money in the hundreds of thousands some months to lawyers, to families, to commissary accounts and stuff like that. And so what matters to me is the work gets done, and all the accounting and bookkeeping, it's there. We've been doing it. I have a spreadsheet for every single month and stuff. Actually, here's my number one proof as of right now that we're legit. Back about 3 or 4 months ago, an attorney, God bless his heart and soul, Bill Shipley, attacked my GiveSendGo account, claiming that I had stolen artwork or something from him. God bless him. And GiveSendGo put my account under audit, and we had to send them a full transparency report of bank statements and everything. I was able to bring money in, but I was not able to take the money out of my GiveSendGo. We talked with the CEO. These people have loved me for years because we've been one of the only Jan 6 organizations that's been super forthright in everything that we do. And the CEO called up my lawyer, called up my dad, said, look, we this is just part of protocol and procedure. We trust you guys. You guys are cream of the crop type of people. And they went through all of our stuff. And they then blocked my account because they even sent us an email and stuff. So I have, I don't spend my time battling other conservatives and other crazy people. God bless them. I spend my time, like March, we put 200 points on the scoreboard. We went from 800 sponsors on SponsorJ6.com to 1,000 sponsors. We're at $40,000 a month right now that we bring in through SponsorJ6.com that goes right out to the commissary accounts of Patriots. And so if I spend all my time bickering on social media and answering all this stuff, there wouldn't be wins happening. We wouldn't be filing the J6ClassAction.com lawsuit that I'm sure everybody's seen some of the viral videos of us serving. I haven't seen them, but I hear that the guy's face, Thomas Tobias, the lead attorney, Viva, if you could pull that up, it's the best video online, most fine video of 2020. It's on my Twitter. My team posted it on my Twitter. It's probably from about 7-8 days ago now. And it's a video of us serving the lead attorney, the general counsel for the U.S. Capitol Police, in his home. And his face apparently is like one of shock and awe. And so, I'm over here doing interviews, trying to stay alive in federal prison, trying to keep my body and my mind healthy, reading the Bible, working out, managing relationships with my friends, family, and media contacts. I run a business called BlessedNewsTV.com. I run LibertyCentric.com. I run $1 million organization for fundraising. I do the J6 change of venue. I have my own legal case I'm fighting. I have the Political Prisoner podcast. I have a million things I'm doing. My fight with Kyle Seraphin, I don't have one. I've never even had an interaction with this former FBI agent. My fight with Bill Shipley, my fight with Tim Hale, Cynthia Hughes, Steve Baker is non-existent. I don't have one with them. I love them. I support all the work they do. Appreciate transparency from all of your guys' work as I fight to give you guys mine from a jail cell. I've been transparent. 3 times on the Gateway Pundit, we have released full transparency documents. Jim Hoff completely supports and backs us. If you guys go to thegatewaypundit.com and type in J6 transparency, you will see our transparency documents. The community at large knows who we are. There are some fringe elements that have been embittered by God knows what, it seems like a hypnotism, into calling me a Fed, into calling me a grifter, into calling me all these things. Well, meanwhile, I've done years of solitary confinement. By the grace of God, I got stronger and keener and clearer and more full of love and less prone to infighting. And my growth is before America. I was a club promoter. I was a shallow person. Now somebody that humbly tries to serve others, and My documentation's all there. The receipts are here. Those who have spoken ill against me with unfounded claims, I believe will stand before God one day and have to answer for those. But I just look for reconciliation. I have nothing, no problem. Kyle Seraphin, you're awesome. God bless you for speaking out against the FBI. Tim Hale, you're a Jan 6 Patriot brother of mine. I don't care what your Aunt Cynthia organization, if you guys raise $10 million or you raise $0 this year. God bless you. I hope it's closer to 10 million than it is to zero. I hope that you guys only spend 10-20% on your staffing costs and your advertising costs, as I try to keep mine down to around that range, not 40-50%. I pray that everybody's transparent and wholehearted and moves forward. I have no problems with any of you guys. Steve Baker, last time I spoke, we were doing an interview. Where's this con man garbage coming from? You don't know me. You have no idea who I am. I'm a Jan 6 Patriot. I'd do it again if our country needed us, man. I mean, what are we doing in this country if we're not willing to stand against tyranny and against evil? I'm not saying show up to the Capitol with a baseball bat. I surely didn't. I showed up with prayers in my heart. But when the situation arises, you got to be willing to do what is necessary to defend this country. If you have this mindset that you are in submission to the tyrants, and that there are certain levels that you're not willing to go to defend this country, they will use that against you. They will pull your card, as we call it in prison. And if you're not willing to go the full measure for liberty or death, 1776 style patriot, then they will pull your card and they will push you to the brink, and you will end up with social credit scores like China, facial recognition tracking, and a complete society of sheep. And so it's either one or the other. You're either willing to go liberty or death, or you have limits. And just like Patrick O'Keefe said, or James O'Keefe, sorry. He's so Irish, I want to call him Patrick. James O'Keefe said, what's your price? If it's not death, if your price is not willing to die for truth and liberty, then you have a price and you are buyable. And mine is 1776, founding father style, all or nothing, and I'm not ashamed of it. And God, forgive me if I'm wrong. We have heard, not myself personally, we've heard from the January Sixers 3 weeks ago that we're getting pardons, God willing, when Big Daddy Trump comes into office. So that's great. Trump has played 5D chess. I've been critical of his distance from the January 6th movement thus far, because I believe, like Martin Luther King, would have been linked armed in arm with our family members and walking down the streets of Washington, D.C. with 400,000 people behind him saying, "We shall overcome, free the Jan Sixers." I've done 40 months of prison, and just now we're hearing that we're going to be getting pardons. But in his defense, he had to wait, the 5D chess style, until the atmosphere, the American people were ready to hear a tweet from Trump that he's going to pardon the Jan Sixers. Because if he did that 3 months after January 6th, it would have been career suicide. And now that the truth has come out through brave investigative journalists like my friend or former friend or whatever you want to call him, Steve Baker, and all these guys are awesome people, Joe Hanneman and Julie Kelly, and all these awesome people out there. Some of them don't like me, but I love you guys. And you guys do the hard work, and you've made the atmosphere possible, along with the Jan Sixers and our family members and this whole community working in one body in Christ. Not everybody's a hand, not everybody's a foot, not everybody's an eyeball. Everybody has their own role to play, and we've worked as a community to win the narrative back, and that's all that matters to me. Oh, God willing, we've grown in grace, brother. There's a certain grace that you receive under fire, under pressure. God's his ability to just lend his presence, to sew up the cords of your mind. I've had some months where it's just been me, a handset radio, and K-Love, and 1,000 burpees a day, man. And letters coming in the hundreds from the outside world. And that was my life. And I loved it. My fellowship with God, when in those very quiet times, those late nights reflecting on who I was in the past, where I'm weak in my character, where I'm weak in temptation, where in God's word I can go to seek to receive healing in those places and receive strength in those places are some of the best times of my life, because it's not where you get to, it's who you become in the journey. And I'm liking who I'm becoming, and I still got so much work to do, but I'm liking the journey because it's God's will. And you got to either enjoy what's happening to you with joy in your heart, knowing that it's working out a purpose that is so much more magnificent and grander than you can see from your limited viewpoint as a human being. You know, his ways are higher than our ways. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. As far as heaven is above the earth, or as far as God's thoughts and his plans above ours. And if you can humble yourself and receive, be in a state of reception and gratitude for the small things and the large things, God will open up prison doors, both physically, spiritually, theoretically, to unlimited possibilities. He's brought me so much in my life these last 3 years. A renewed relationship with all my friends and family that's built off of, you know, realness, and seeing them come to my aid during my time of need. An amazing network of brothers and sisters in Christ, people like yourself, Viva, an amazing fiance, and, you know, even my enemies. You can tell how big you are, I guess, by who your enemies are. You know what I mean? How successful you are. Even the DOJ, the FBI, Biden talking about us at his first, campaign speech and stuff. These people, they're not. I mean, the enemy is sin. The enemy is the devil. Joe Biden's not the enemy, but these people style us as their enemies. And to be a threat, on the stranglehold of the head of the snake is a great thing. That they would consider us to be domestic threats is almost our duty in this day and age, because if tyrants consider you a threat, that means you're doing the right thing. But I've had prison guards that have pepper sprayed me and left me half naked for 2 weeks, and brought me to court on video visits, shoeless, without underwear on. I had guards that have come down to my solitary confinement cell, laid hands on me and prayed in tongues, and brought holy fire down from heaven into my heart, and ministered and mentored to me. We were dealing with individuals here, but for the most part in the DC Gulag, the DC resident guards, the African American, 95%. Excuse me, guys. There's somebody behind me on the phone. Wants to go on the phone, but I'm okay. I told him it's all good. Your typical DC resident African American guard thought we were racist, thought we were like the scum of the earth, and treated us that way for a while. But 2-3 years after living with these people, realizing that they're not in danger when they're around us, we're not smoking drugs, we're not violently attacking each other in the pod often. They got to know that we were men of righteous character, that we held Bible studies with sometimes 20, 30 people in them. We looked out for the other members of the DC community, doing fundraisers for their kids for Christmas and stuff like that. They got to know us. So the first year was treacherous. We were the violent domestic terrorist Jan Sixers, and they didn't know us. We were behind the door, right? They couldn't get to get to know us because we were in solitary confinement. But after a while, we won over their hearts, and now I'm in a completely different prison. Most of the guards don't even know I'm a Jan Sixer. Some of them come up and know who I am and whatnot, and they openly voice their support for Trump, which is awesome. I haven't met a single federal prisoner, and very few federal prison guards that are not Trump supporters. But when you're 2 miles, 3 miles away from the United States Capitol, held as a political prisoner, follow me personally on my Twitter at JakeLangJ6. But to write, way more important than that, write the January Sixers, write my brothers and sisters. There's 270 of us behind bars right now. Write them. Go to patriotmailproject.com. Okay, that's the spot to go. That's run by one of my great friends, Paula Callaway. An invaluable resource, patriotmailproject.com. That's got every single address of every Jan Sixer and even a lot of their personal Give Send Go accounts. You guys can go and give to them personally on their Give Send Go. I'm not ashamed. God bless. Go do what you want. One of the problems about giving to individually is that you have some Jan Sixers that are great at marketing themselves and they have like 80, 90, 100,000 in their Give Send Go. And then you have some like Midwest, carpenters that don't really know what they're doing on social media and whatnot. And they've got like $1,500 in their Give Send Go. So, if you want to, guys, give to a centralized fund that I manage and I have full transparency of, and we do everything possible to make sure it gets directly to the people. No crazy middlemaning. SponsorJ6.com is a great place to go. It's a recurring monthly donation site. Like I said, we have about 1,000 people right now that are donors. The need is incredible. I receive requests through myself and through my volunteers of maybe 10 to 20 different requests for emergency family funds every day. People's mortgages, they're missing, because the men most of them were the breadwinners. And a lot of them left young wives and kids at home. They were ripped out of the home by the FBI. And so they're not able to provide anymore. So these wives that have not worked, maybe ever, and the kids are home trying to fend for themselves. Plus, they now have to pay lawyer fees, commissary fees, phone calls, and stuff like that. So we try to step up and do the right thing. And decentralized fund seems to be the best way. We had a lot of people giving individually for a while. Things were happening where many were going with and many were going without. Now we have a place where everything gets evenly distributed as far as needs go. So Sponsor J6 is a great place to go, guys. Do your due diligence. Like I said, go to thegatewaypundit.com, type in January 6th transparency, and you will see our transparency reports. I'm not hiding anything here. I come from a wealthy family. God bless my father. I have been a successful entrepreneur in my life. I don't need this, stuff, the money. I'm here to try to, one of my greatest joys is making sure that the government's wicked plans to destroy families and leave people hungry and destitute without lawyers, without commissary food is completely thwarted. And it gives me great joy to know that at least on the battlefront of financial donations, we're able to support those patriots and family members and people that need, so that the government's ultimate plan of ripping the dad out of the home and leaving the wife and the kids destitute is not really able to come to fruition. We're strong when we're united, and it's taken us 3 years and 4 months to get here. And so we're here, but we've got a long battle ahead of us. We don't know how long this could last, but it's going to last until at least January 20th, 2024 for 90% of us. So we have to get there, guys. That's another, 9 months away. Lot can happen in 9 months. A lot of people's cars repossessed, people ending up homeless, Jan Sixers getting out of prison, having nowhere to go, sleeping in cars. I receive requests for every single thing, every single day. Can you rent me out of an apartment? Can you pay off a credit card bill that is, keeping it so I can't put food on the table? Whatever it is, we just want to be here for our community, and we need your guys' help. We're the persecuted patriots that stood up to defend this country on January 6th, and we want your help, and we appreciate your help, and we love you guys for your help, but we need it. And so we're here asking humbly for it, and we're grateful. I'm in Brooklyn, MDC Federal Prison in New York, a notorious gang prison, the same prison system that Jeffrey Epstein was murdered in by Hillary Clinton. First of all, my whole entire heart is with those families, God forbid, and with the families of the January Sixers who have committed suicide as well. My hearts are with you guys. I love you guys. Jerry Perna, God bless you if you're listening. We love you. We love Matthew. He's a hero. Mickey, if you're listening, we love Ashley Babbitt. She's a hero. Roseanne's family. God bless you guys. Roseanne is a hero. We love her. And Kevin and Greason and Benjamin Phillips' family. We love you guys, and Brian Sicknick's family. This is not a community full of bitterness and hatred. We don't seek retribution or vengeance. We seek justice. We seek truth. We seek the love of our enemies. And I pray to God that through this podcast that we've done today, those people that I spoke about earlier, and the Antifa people that are listening, and the federal prosecutors that are listening, we're all Americans, and we're all God's children if you so choose to come into his kingdom. You're missing the point here. What happened on January 6th was God's will, and you need to understand that a free country as America is a very fragile experiment, and it can take just a little bit for this whole entire thing to go straight to communist, full-blown China. And if you don't respect your fellow man and woman who stood up on January 6th to defend this constitutional republic, then I don't know who you can respect. These people that I'm surrounded with, the Sixers, are the bravest, most selfless individuals I've ever met in my life, and I love all of them. My internal fidelity is with every single one of them, and I pray that the American people and history remembers us in the same way, not as violent insurrectionists, but as patriots who stood up to defend this country against tyranny. It's scheduled for September. Your prayers are appreciated, guys. Your love and support's appreciated. We're ready to rock and roll. I'm very excited for my opportunity to prove my innocence. I hope that I can get a change of venue and go in front of a jury of my peers, so I can, win this trial in the fashion that God's put in my heart that I want to do it in. Walk out of there a free man, exonerated by a jury of my peers, justified for my life-saving action on January 6th, for my patriotic action on January 6th, and not condemned for taking matters into our own hands when everybody else refused to stand up. The Jan Sixers did what was needed.